Welcome to A Kind Life. Today I'm very grateful to have Olivia Charlton here. How are you going, Liv?
I'm good. How are you?
Yeah, good, thank you. Now, I'm excited that we're doing this because I first learned about yourself through a previous podcast guest, Angela. Obviously, having started to follow her and see what she does, I noticed that you guys both do some actions together. So I'm very excited. At some point, I'm sure we'll hear parts of that story.
Yeah, for sure, definitely.
So tell us a little bit about yourself, Liz.
So I've probably been involved in activism for maybe 5 or 6 years now. My main job, I work full-time for PETA Asia. And I also have what you just mentioned. I have another group called Dolphin Freedom Fighters. So we'll get into all of that sort of stuff. But other than that, I live in the Otways in Victoria, and we've got 7 rescue animals. We've got 4 cats, 2 rabbits, and a dog. So most of my time, honestly, when I'm not working is probably spent with them or exploring this area. Yeah, it's such a beautiful area. Like once COVID hit and everyone went into lockdown, we kind of escaped. So that was really great. So yeah, we've just been exploring this area for like a year, and there's beautiful waterfalls and walks, and yeah.
It's sort of a bit confusing, Liv, because you've got this Kiwi accent, and then you mentioned that you work for PETA Asia and you're in Victoria. So maybe explain a little bit of that for us.
Yeah, so I'm from New Zealand. I moved over here to Melbourne maybe about 8 or between 8 and 10 years ago now. It's been a while. And in between that time, I've done a lot of traveling to Asia. Spent quite a bit of time in Thailand with the elephants and stuff like that. And yeah, so there is a PETA Australia, which covers Australia and New Zealand, but I've always just been drawn to Asia, and there's really like so much that needs to be done there as well. And we also cover Africa and the Middle East sort of region as well. So yeah, I made the choice that I wanted to work for PETA Asia. Yeah. So it is a bit confusing, but I get to, when COVID's not around, I get to go over there quite a lot, which is great.
Yeah. And so which part of your journey came first, Olivia? Was it going vegan or working for PETA?
It was going vegan. I went vegan first. But very quickly got into activism after that. I don't even have like a very interesting I went vegan story. I was vegetarian since I was like 13, and I think honestly I knew about vegans. I think I like purposely just closed myself off from looking into it further, and it's like so embarrassing now, but yeah, if I saw something about dairy, I'd shut it down. I wouldn't read it, anything like that, because really I just didn't want to make the changes, like it was just an inconvenience, and I knew once I looked into it the changes would have to happen. So it took me until maybe like my early 20s until I started looking into dairy and eggs, and from that went vegan pretty quickly.
Yeah. and then you said you went into activism quite quickly. So how did that start for you?
So after I went vegan, it kind of goes hand in hand. I knew I wanted to be an animal activist. It's something that I just always wanted to do my whole life. But like life gets in the way and you go off and do other things. So yeah, I knew I wanted to do that. And then obviously once you start looking into what's the best thing you can do for animals, not eat them. So yeah, went vegan, and then I was like, okay, like what can I do now? The first thing I went to, I think, was a animal liberation Victoria. Was kind of like a teaching seminar about how to take photography of animals. Yeah, it was really good, and they had an investigator there. I can't remember his name now. But he was awesome and had just done like some undercover stuff on some puppy mills. So he was like talking about everything that he did, and like, you know, at the end, he's like, you know, this may sound like fun and exciting, but there's like this dark side to it. And I was like, oh no, it sounds fun and exciting to me. Like, that's what I want to do. And then kind of, I think I went to a vigil shortly after that, which I think was over like a few days. I think like we came back each day for pigs at a pig slaughterhouse. And that was, I think, like, it was super hard for me. Like, I hadn't seen that sort of thing before. Like, you know, I'd never looked into the animals' eyes as they were like going into the slaughterhouse. So personally, I think I don't think that was for me. You know, so I tried it out. It really affected me, like mentally, like seeing them like that. And so I started looking for like other things I could do. I think now I've got a bit of a barrier. So, you know, obviously now it's different, but as my first thing, I was kind of like, oh. And I saw a lot of other new activists kind of come to that same event and then drop off from it. So yeah, I think, like, you know, if we're coming into activism, we need to try out like heaps of different things, because, you know, if you go to one thing and you're traumatized and then just quit, you know, that's not the best thing.
Yeah. And then how did you, I guess, you know, it's probably a lot of people's dream really to, you know, go from being an activist, a voluntary activist, you know, in your spare time, to actually then being employed by an animal protection like agency or authority, you know, or organization, how did that happen for you?
Yeah, so I agree, like, it is the dream, and it was my dream since I was like super young. But I didn't think, like, you know, it could ever happen. So I actually worked in the fashion industry for like about 10 years, which, you know, it was fine for a while, but as I grew up and started caring about certain things, it didn't really align with me anymore. The first time I kind of questioned it, our production manager came back from a trip from China, and he was showing me these photos of like just a lake filled with dead fish. Like, there were dead fish just layered on the top of this lake. And I was like, okay, from all the pollution from the garment factory. So yeah, it took me a couple of years to get out of there. Probably the final straw was, I don't know if you remember, I think it was about 2013. There was a garment factory in Bangladesh that collapsed. Yeah, there was over 1,000 people died in that. And I just remember sitting there and everyone was like, oh no, now they're going to put like regulations in place, like China, and the prices are going to go up, you know. So I resigned shortly after that. I was like, this is like, I don't know if I can swear on this. This is screwed
Absolutely.
up.
Yeah, absolutely. Go for your life.
Yeah, so I got out of that and I was like, oh my God, like, what am I going to do? And I went and like did some event planning for a while. And then I was like, why don't I just try and get a job at PETA? So I applied for their internship, which it's cancelled at the moment because of COVID again, but hopefully it gets back going. So I went over and did that in the Philippines for 2 months. And I kind of lied to my husband about it. I said, oh yeah, once I finish that, there's going to be like this job for me. So I had to get the job. I like had to get that, otherwise I was going to be in like huge trouble. And honestly, like it was all timing. Like it was just, I think it was just meant to be, because there was another girl, she resigned like a month into my internship, and you know, I was straight in there. I was like, I'll have that job. So yeah, that's how it happened. Like a lot of people that work there have done an internship before. Just, you know, it's not really like a normal sort of job. So you know, you have to have a bit of a test, I guess, just to see how you.
What was your experience like on the internship?
It was intense. Just yeah, you're kind of like thrown in there. And it's yeah, it's just a lot of learning really, really quickly. And then there's the other side of it where you're doing the animal care in the Philippines. So they do care for the street dogs and street cats. Yeah, doing all their spay and neutering, vaccinations, all sorts of treatments that the communities there can't really afford to get done themselves. So yeah, that's eye-opening in itself. You know, like I have never been to areas like that before in my life. And then just the work, it was a lot of like research. Yeah, there was some vegan outreach. So going and handing out leaflets and talking to people on the streets.
Yeah.
But yeah, went for a couple of months, and it was difficult, just, you know, being away from all the animals that we have. And but yeah, it was worth it in the end for sure.
And tell us what you do now for PETA, and you know what you're involved in.
So at the moment, I'm helping to manage our campaigns. So PETA Asia does a lot of investigations. You might have seen the coconut monkey in Thailand.
Yeah.
That's one of our main investigations at the moment. We've got the civet coffee from Indonesia, badger hair brushes, and we're doing a lot of work over in Petra with the donkeys.
I'm going to ask you, how do you, I mean, that's something I've always wondered is, you know, do you have people that sort of provide like tip-offs where you then go and investigate, or do you actively have people on the ground investigating things, just sort of like trying to understand what's going on over there?
Yeah, so investigations can come like to our attention in that way, like reported from a whistleblower, or you know, even a tourist has seen something and written in about it. So that was my initial job at PETA, was monitoring those cruelty complaints that came in. So yeah, investigations can come from those. So like everyone should always, you know, if they have any sort of idea, even if you don't get a response, I think it's like super important to like write in what you see, and if you have any ideas and that sort of thing, because yeah, it's super helpful. And then other ones are just, you know, what we've been researching. They branch off from, you know, the topics that we cover, so like entertainment and experimentation, animals for food, what else, clothing, did I say that?
Do you find that I guess some people might look at it and think, oh, that's like a single animal. But I'm guessing that that those exact, cases that you do document and share in the public and in the media are then almost like, I suppose, a keystone example of what's happening in that area or in that country, on a larger scale. Is that sort of fair to say?
Yeah, for sure. There's like, our investigations aren't really like, oh, we saw this one thing that we recorded and it's terrible. It's kind of like a general idea of what the whole industry is, so that's why we try to go to like a number of different facilities. We're not just going to a couple. Yeah, definitely. Like over we've done a few wool investigations in Australia. So with wool, it's, you can walk into any wool shed pretty much, like 99.9% of them, and you're going to see abuse like pretty quickly. So yeah, like some industries, just literally you walk in and you'll see abuse. Some other ones, with the coconut industry, they visited like multiple farms, like all over the country, and just the same thing at all of them.
How do you then gain that media attention? Like, in terms of, is that relationships that PETA has specifically with media outlets, or is it just generally, I guess, something that gets media attention because of the severity of what's happening?
I think it's super hard to get the media to cover your story, depending what country you are in. In Australia, it depends what sort of topic you're talking about. But in Japan, for example, it's really hard to get anything to do with veganism in the media, but that's kind of changing. But yeah, it's all relationships that individual people at PETA have, formed with the media. And like super important relationships to have, definitely. And it's always changing as well. People are leaving and coming and going. So
yeah, and I think too, you're also, like, PETA is also sort of known for some of those, I guess you would say, a bit more spicier campaigns, like that get or grab people's attention, which I think is, a slightly different angle to what you might see in more kind of mainstream, in inverted commas, like activism. So, potentially things like disruptions, or even, just using a bit more, I suppose, like, yeah, exposure of, celebrities or other things. So is that something you think that works effectively?
yeah, I think, there's some pretty crazy visuals that PETA has done, and whether we like doing it or not, sometimes, we're like, oh, great. But the whole purpose is to get the media to come along. We want them there because if they're there, it's great to have the public, or see the general public that's around. But if you can get it into the media, you can literally reach like thousands of people, like, if it goes. Like, we did one in Melbourne not that long ago, which went all around the world. So, you could potentially reach millions of people with your message. So yeah, that's why we try so hard to get media, like, just to spread the message further, really.
And was the one you mentioned in Melbourne, was that at the Grand Prix?
No, no media came to that one. I think they were all too busy inside. And they've got some crazy new, well, I'm not sure if it's new laws, but we weren't allowed to be where we wanted to be. So we weren't that close to the entrance anyway. But the one that I was talking about was for the coconut monkeys. So we did it outside the Thai embassy. And just one of the media wires came. So he came and took some photos, and then the media come and take that photo to run their own story, sort of thing. So yeah, it went all over the world, like probably over 200 media outlets. Yeah.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And I guess you mentioned before that you're involved in Dolphin Freedom Fighters. So can you tell us a bit about that organisation?
Yeah, so Dolphin Freedom Fighters, we've been around for, a couple of years. We started brainstorming for it during COVID. The main reason being, there's already some great organisations working, advocating against SeaWorld already. There's World Animal Protection and Action for Dolphins, and a few other ones. But there was no one local, so we really just wanted to start a pressure campaign just to be like in front of SeaWorld, annoying them, annoying their customers, just to like fill a gap, to like add some pressure to what the other groups were doing. So that's how it really started, just wanting to do protests. But now it's kind of advanced to, we're going to have a website out shortly. And we've also gone over to Japan. So we've got DFF, Dolphin Freedom Fighters Japan now, which is run by locals, not in Tajay, they're in Tokyo. So their aim more is to target government. They did one the other day in front of the Ministry of Fisheries. So, there's a few studies done recently about how dolphin meat is toxic. So they'd go and hold their signs, stop the toxic sale, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
Which isn't done, there's great activists in Japan. There really is. There's like a great activism scene. But no one really targeting these government officials. So again, we kind of like looked for where the gap was there, and we've got some great activists over there they just run it themselves, do everything themselves. So yeah, it's perfect.
Yeah, it's pretty incredible seeing on social media. I had no idea that there was like a group over in Japan, and it's awesome to see. They seem to be fairly active, so it's great seeing them out, in front of different buildings or facilities and things. Really, trying to get people to understand that it's not as accepted as it used to be and what the issues are.
Yeah, there's a lot. They do a bit of education as well in like the main areas in Tokyo. And it's not as widely known about as perhaps we would think it would be. So yeah, they're doing an awesome job.
And so one of the things, I guess, where I first sort of got to know you on social media was where you were involved in the demonstration outside SeaWorld, where you had people dressed up in dolphin costumes. And you had a real display, I guess, to try and paint a visual. I'll link it in the show notes so that people can have a look. But it was a great visual of understanding, there was basically, you'd say like tombstones with dolphins' names and their cause of death, how old they were and their cause of death. And then having, people laying in these dolphin sort of suits, you would say, was such a great visual for people to understand, because a lot of these things, when a dolphin might pass away in captivity, it's always, sort of undercover. It's very quiet. It's not mentioned. And so that you guys were really exposing what's happening here in Australia.
Yeah, that was exactly the point of that demonstration, was to, show a lack of transparency. Like SeaWorld doesn't have to report to anyone. They do whatever they want. So we don't know who's born there. We don't know who dies, who's sick. We don't really know anything. So the reason we had those names and causes of death that we put on the tombstones was because of the CETA base, who track all the births and sales and deaths of captive dolphins like around the world. So a lot of the causes of death weren't known. But, there's 60 dolphins. I think there's more than 60 dolphins listed there. And that's what we know. So, we had the big banner SeaWorld kills. And the gravestones with the causes of death and everything. And then we had two, they were body painted actually. Dolphins lying down at the front. So, no media, unfortunately, they didn't come to that one either. But that's what that was about, trying to get people to pay attention, like, oh, what's going on in there, like what are they doing, no one knows.
Yeah. And did you get interaction from members of the public?
Yeah, we did, because people were walking past us as they were going in. 2 teenage girls, they were quite concerned about it and asked us a few questions, and we sent them in and told them to ask staff, oh, how many dolphins have died here? And they were pleased to do that. So, but the process that we do every month, like the public support is like amazing. Like every second car is like tooting in support, it's just the tourists, I think, that are coming in and then, going to SeaWorld. So it's quite a positive experience. The monthly protest, so anyone in Queensland come along, because the numbers have dropped down since COVID as well, so we want to try and get the numbers back up.
Yeah. And do you think, generally within like Australia, we're more moving to understand that, animals are not here for our entertainment? Like, do you have any sort of, I guess, understanding of the numbers of people? Like, have they dropped over the years going into SeaWorld, or is it sort of staying similar?
It's kind of hard to tell with COVID. Sometimes I'm hopeful, but other times, like even in some vegan groups, sometimes you see, but they do all the great rescue work, and when in reality, the last like numbers that were out about that, they were spending like less than 1% of their profits on rescue. So, and anyway, if they are doing rescue, that's great, but it's still not an excuse for the other things that they're doing. So yeah, sometimes I have hope, but then I read some vegan pages and that diminishes it. But I think so. I think the public opinion is changing, against zoos, as well as marine parks, definitely. We have a ban of dolphin breeding in New South Wales. I think we're making progress. I think definitely within my lifetime, I hope, there won't be any more. Well, it would be great if there were no animals at SeaWorld. Like, they have some amazing rides. They can make an amazing like water park sort of thing, and it could be an animal-free park. Like, I'll go, So
has there been any commitment at all from SeaWorld in terms of anything? Like, I mean, I'm sure when we say that, though, even if there was, it would be more like around welfare standards or something. They're not willing to agree to, as stronger things as we would like to see. But have you, has there been anything there, I guess, that you could share about those interactions?
There's really not anything positive to say. They're very firm on their stance not to stop breeding the dolphins. So yeah, I think as well, they're kind of digging their heels in a bit, but that's where the other groups, Action for Dolphins and World Animal Protection, they're at the level where they can communicate with SeaWorld as well. But I don't think SeaWorld's very receptive at all to any sort of discussions.
Yeah, you sort of hope that, potentially, someone becomes elected in the state parliament there that is really takes that forward, like Emma Hurst did in New South Wales, to be able to stop that continuing to happen.
Exactly. Yeah, that's what we really need. Someone in Animal Justice Party up there making some changes.
Yeah.
Sure.
So in terms of, I guess, moving forward, Liv, like, is there anything that you're looking to do a bit differently with Dolphin Freedom Fighters?
So we've got a stall coming up that we're going to start doing in public areas with a bit of foot traffic, aimed at kids. So we're going to have this big kind of photo booth background, which is of a dolphin in a fishbowl. I think it says "Let me be free" or something like that. And then we're going to have kids with their little signs, like, you know, like "I love dolphins" and whatever, that sort of thing. You know, colouring and competition, just like more things to target the kids, you know, because they're the ones that are like, "Oh, I want to go to SeaWorld." So yeah, we've got that coming up, hopefully starting around July, August. And at the moment, just before our website's going to launch, so that's probably still a couple of months away. The poor guy, honestly. It's a lot of work. So me and Angela are always quite busy doing other things. So he's always like, "What about this? What about this?" So yeah, he's doing a great job, mostly like dealing with us. But yeah, we're just deciding as well on the Japan campaign, which direction we're going to go for that, because obviously there's people in Tajay, activists there's other groups there as well, so we don't want to tread on any toes, but we also want to cover something that no one else is covering.
I'm thinking that might be something, if you're happy to talk about, Olivia, is that, you know, a lot of people may not be aware that, like, they know what goes on in Tajay, but they don't, you know, they may not be aware that a lot of those dolphins are then taken into captivity into either, you know, private parks or like for, you know, entertainment in other sort of sea parks, as we call them. Is that something you'd be happy to have a chat about?
Yeah, it's just something we're researching at the moment. So there's an organization in Japan which did monitor the dolphins going to aquariums and that sort of stuff, but then they kind of decided they weren't that happy with it. But then another organization has come in and said, "Okay, well, we are happy with it." So they've kind of taken over that, so nothing's really changed, it's just kind of changed hands. But yeah, I guess just making people aware within Japan, because a lot of them are still within Japan at different marine parks, so just making people aware where they've come from. In Australia, obviously we can't have wild dolphins here, so that they breed in the SeaWorld. But yeah, just a lot of people don't really realize, you know, they're captured and, you know, some of their family are slaughtered in front of them, some of them are put aside to go to a marine park. And I mean, honestly, I don't know what what one's worse.
Where did your love of dolphins come from?
Yeah, I was kind of hoping you wouldn't ask this question. So when I was a kid, I wanted to be a dolphin trainer at SeaWorld. Okay.
Yeah.
It's my secret. Yeah, I did. It was like my dream. And my dad took me to SeaWorld a couple of times. I swam with dolphins at SeaWorld. You know, and it's just, I've just felt so guilty about it. Pretty much, yeah, my whole life. As soon as I started, you know, learning about how much they suffer in captivity, I was, you know, horrified by by what I wanted to do. So then obviously it kind of, my dream changed. But yeah, I don't know, I think it is fueled from that guilt a little bit. And just I hate zoos and I hate marine parks so much. You know, I talked about people defending them on some groups and stuff. It literally puts me into a rage blackout. Like I cannot get involved in any sort of conversations about zoos or marine parks on Facebook, because it's just infuriates me so much. Yeah, with a lot of us, you know, there's the key animals we all sort of love that draw us into sometimes activism, like elephants was another one for me. I think you do some work with people in Africa. So I think, dolphins was that animal for me.
I can definitely relate though, because growing up first I wanted to be a guide dog trainer, which is very very niche and very strange now that I think about it, but also then it moved from that into a zookeeper. And so I think, for me, I always loved animals, and I loved, going to the zoo to see animals, because when you're a child, you don't know any different. But I look at it now and it's interesting actually, and I'd be interested to know if you sort of think the same, is that, as you get older, I've heard someone say that if you look back at what you wanted to be when you're a child, you can often see, a link between it wasn't exactly what you wanted to be, but the concept of the reason why. So like I look at it and I think for me, it was about helping animals. Like, yes, I wanted to be a zookeeper, which I would never be now, but, I wanted to help animals. And now I look at it and I think, well, that's what I do the majority of, my life, or my purpose in life is to help animals, but it's just in a totally different form. So you can probably relate to that.
Yeah, definitely. I think, that's what it is. But I also think like back then I didn't realize that, that we don't need to be touching animals or interacting with them in any way. I just wanted to be like close to the dolphins, not really like considering what they wanted. So yeah, I guess that's, we think more about them. What they want rather than,
What I'd be interested to understand as well, you have mentioned that you do a lot of travel for work, but I guess just generally, do you have advice for people that, do want to go overseas and may be exposed to, the different ways that other countries exploit, native icons or animals? And, I guess what would your advice be to, avoid that, or to, like you were saying maybe before about reporting it? Like, what would be some tips you would have for that?
I think, I think like I get a lot of complaints about people, they've seen something, and that's all great and fine, but if you have no footage of it or no images of it, there's not a lot you can do. If it's like something that is legal that you can't really stop, the only thing you can try and do is expose it, so for that you need video. Video is better than images, and I mean there's video tips. So when you are videoing, just make sure you like stay on the subject for like 3 to 5 seconds. You get a lot of footage sent in and it's like you're in like a ship or something. If you just stay still, which it's kind of hard to do because you've got like adrenaline going sometimes and you're trying to get everything, and just reporting it. A lot of places in Asia, we already know about, but it's good to have like, okay, this zoo is doing this in January of 2022, so we still know that it's terrible, and it's still something that needs to be worked on. Other tips, if you're like, it's kind of easier to record things in Asia, some countries, not all countries. But for example, we had a guy, he was just a tourist and he was in Chiang Mai in Thailand, and he saw a slaughterhouse and he just walked in and started recording, and he was just like, oh, I'm just, don't mind me, I'm just recording. And I guess people are like, like over here in Australia, farmers never go, or a slaughterhouse is never going to let you in, like, ever. So but they're less kind of concerned with what you're going to go and do with that footage, because there's not as much activism around in Asia for them to notice. So that's like a benefit with Asia. You can just walk in some places and start recording. And in public places it's like completely legal most of the time to just get it out, if you're at a zoo or an elephant trekking place, or you see some civet cats in Bali in a cage, there's usually no problem with recording it. So yeah, just record, take footage. That's my tip. Yeah, because you can also use it to lodge complaints, if there's laws against what's happening, which a lot of times there isn't, but you can still get changes made when the laws aren't, perfectly in place as well.
Yeah. Would you say that there is like animal friendly, travel in terms of, being able to see animals maybe more in their natural, in like the wild or in a natural circumstance? Like how do you sort of, I suppose, feel about that subject?
Yeah, I mean, like, if we're talking about elephants in Thailand, there's not really anywhere in the wild for them to be anymore. So there are, sanctuaries, small sanctuaries, which are hands off, the guests don't touch the elephants. They just observe them in their natural setting. So there's definitely those sanctuaries which I myself approve of. One of my best friend runs one in Phuket. But there's also a lot which have kind of like caught on to, as you know, like, oh, we're a sanctuary now, and it's just far from. So I think you just look for anything where it's completely like hands off. But even then, sometimes, you'll turn up and it won't be what it's said. But, I think you can always, email PETA or email, animal group and ask what they think about a certain place.
Yeah. I think that's great advice, because often we want to be able to maybe have a holiday that involves some form of helping or volunteering or being able to visit and donate, and so it's good to understand what to kind of look out for or how to check that they do have the animal's best interests at heart.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, and it's hard sometimes to recommend certain ones just because I haven't been there. You don't want to without seeing them, you can't really say, but there's definitely some good, boon lots is great in Thailand, and there's a few other ones. It's definitely changing over there. A lot of camps, riding camps are turning into hands-off camps. So but the landscape over there has changed so much within animal rescue. There's been COVID, so tourism's just died. So there's been a lot of suffering, I think, from lack of income to
And I noticed as well on your social media that at some point you've had some involvement with like a wildlife sanctuary.
So that sanctuary's in Jambrook. It's a private sanctuary. I started volunteering there before PETA, so maybe like 6 months before I went for my internship. And she does all orphaned wildlife, so joeys, wombats, possums, and we had a koala there at one stage, Joe. She just raises them, and then she lives, her property backs onto a national park, so they go from the baby room or the nursery or whatever and then to the first outside pen and the second outside pen, and then the doors just get open and they all hop away or scuffle away into the forest. She's an amazing woman. I think she's been doing it for like, I don't know, maybe like 30 years or something like that. That's when I kind of changed from event planning, and I was like, okay, I need to do something with animals. But I found I'm not really like a sort of maternal person. So I didn't want to like continue with the sanctuary work. It just another thing, like it wasn't completely suited to me. So I wanted to like find something I would do like long term. But I still volunteer there, and it's great. It's great to just support her, and what she's doing is more what it's about to me. I mean, it's amazing to hang out with the animals and whatever, but there's not a lot of people who do this sort of rescue work, and we need so many more. So if it was just supporting her so she can keep going, and it's she can go out for lunch every now and then, like things like that, or like paint her toenails, who knows.
Yeah. And did you want to mention the name of that sanctuary? Like, is it available? Like, can people, I know you said it's a private residence, but can people support financially or find them online? Or
she doesn't really like being out there.
Yep. No, that's fair enough. No, that's okay. And I guess, Liv, before we finish up, is there anything that we might have missed that you did want to mention? Because I know we've covered so much, and there's a lot to learn about you and everything that you're doing at PETA and also in your personal life. I didn't want to miss anything.
I don't think so. Oh, you did ask me about a quote thing.
Yes. Yeah. Do you have a favorite quote you'd like to share?
Well, it's not a quote as such, but I had two things. I thought about this today. I was like, okay. So I remember around when I was like maybe 6 or 7, I was on this school camp, and this little story got read out. And it's good because this is like good for what we just spoke about, wildlife rescue and stuff. But anyway, it was this little story, and just shorten it, this woman was walking along the beach. You might have heard of it, the starfish story. She was walking along the beach and throwing all these starfish back into the water after a big storm, and this old man comes along and he's like, oh, what are you doing? You're not going to make a difference. And she picks another one up and throws it in, and she's like, oh, it matters to this one. So I really like that, and I've always remembered it, because I think sometimes we just get so overwhelmed with like things aren't changing as fast as we want them to, and like it's a big horrible world. So it's good to sometimes focus down on that like smaller victory and be like making a change in some way.
I was just going to mention I have heard that, because one of my friends actually wears a starfish necklace, and one day I asked her why, what was the starfish, she liked starfish, and she told me that, she's told me that story, and I think it's great.
Yeah, it's a really nice story for sure. Oh, that's cute. Yeah. And the other one I was thinking about is, it was in a Joanne MacArthur interview. And she said something. This was a time when I was like struggling a little bit with all the cruelty footage that I was reviewing and that sort of thing. And she said something like, I'm aware of what's going on, but I don't live there in my head, and I don't live there in my heart. And I really liked that, because I was kind of like at a point where I was like, okay, something needs to change. Like I need to develop some sort of like protection for myself so I can like keep going. So since then she kind of talked about like training your brain in a way. So I started working on that. So when I was getting these complaints, or when I was seeing this footage, I wouldn't start putting myself in, oh, what's this animal feeling right now, because then you go to bed and you're thinking about the animal and you can't sleep. So I think you just train your brain to kind of change directions when you're going too far into thinking about something. So I really liked that one. That changed a lot for me when she said that, because I kind of started thinking about how can I like do this long term and not go crazy.
Yeah. I can only imagine that what you see, is very difficult, but also, like you said, you wanted to be able to do this long term. You don't want it to be something short term, and for yourself and also for the animals. So I have a lot of respect for people like yourself, investigators, and people that put themselves in these situations to be, whistleblowers and to show the public what's happening. But it would definitely take a personal toll on people who do it.
Yeah, investigators are amazing, bravest people. It's the hardest work, they're definitely to be admired for sure.
Yeah. Well, if people do want to see what you're up to in terms of dolphin freedom fighters, or what PETA's doing, or even maybe yourself, are you happy for me to share some links in the show notes to all the social media pages that you're involved in?
Yeah, for sure. I keep my Instagram just private because I like to keep something private. But yeah, I think I sent you the Dolphin Freedom Fighters and PETA Asia, and I've got my Facebook profile, which is like a work sort of activism one as well. So yeah, definitely people can reach out on there. And we do have some jobs available at PETA Asia. So if anyone wants to join our team.
And would they just find that on your website, or what's the best way for them to find that?
Yeah, that's on the PETA Asia website. So there's a few different roles available. It is working in Asia, but a lot of them are remote roles. So
awesome. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, well, I'll share that in there because, like you said, it's often many people's dream to actually be paid for a lot of the work they might be doing voluntarily, like currently. So thanks for sharing that information, and thank you very much for sharing your story as well. I feel as though there probably would have been a lot more in there that we might have skipped over, or that we might be able to hear at another time. So thank you so much, Olivia. I really appreciate it, and look forward to seeing what's coming up for you.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much, and for thinking of me to come and do your podcast as well. It's very kind.
My pleasure. Thank you.